Good to see a lot of the boys are in. It's good to see. So today, I've been doing a few little podcast style events with double coverage, and I've been having a lot of fun with them. So I thought today I'd run my own one, and I'll be having a guest on today. He's a person that's been in the hobby for longer than me. He was actually the first person that I came into contact with through cards, and he does his own content. I thought it'd be a good chance to get him involved. So without further ado, or maybe you request to invite to join. There we go. I'll invite you. Let's see who it is. Hey, Danny boy, how are ya?
How you doing, mate? Yeah, good, thank you.
This is so funny because this is like the first time I've ever spoken to you, which is crazy because we like chat all the time. But it's the
Yeah,
first
it's so
time
strange.
video wise we've ever spoken. So
Yeah,
g'day, mate.
yeah,
How are ya? So
yeah,
as I
good.
mentioned, you do your own content. So how about
Yeah,
you tell everyone about what your content's all about, what you try to do, what you try to teach people?
yeah, sure. So yeah, I do a YouTube channel, not overly successful one. I think I've got like 80 subscribers, but um,
Deserves a
I've
lot more than that. It's better than my content, I'll tell you.
no,
Deserves a
but I have
lot
a
more
lot
than
of
that.
fun with it. And yeah, I think you were one of the early people who kind of got in touch with me, and that was the whole point of the channel to bring some more attention to footy cards, and especially in the investing space. Whereas footy cards over the last since I got in 2016, it's just all about collecting really, and that's I'm a big collector as well, but I'm also a financial kind of person, and I like that
Mhm.
side of things. So just mixing the two together, I thought especially with everything that was going on in 2020 and 2021 with NBA cards, NFL
Yeah.
cards, all that kind of stuff, that similar could happen and actually has happened with the AFL cards
Hmm.
over the past couple of years. So, and I think there is still a long way to go because people love the footy in Australia, and they're so passionate about it that I think they'll be willing to part with big bucks in the future.
Yeah, and the Australian public love to gamble as well, which is maybe something we can talk
Exactly.
about a little bit down the line.
Yeah.
So as you said, you do your own content. It's on YouTube. I'll make sure that I tag and make sure everyone can find your stuff because it's really good. I love it.
Thanks,
Um,
man.
you're currently living in New York. Tell us about that.
Yes, I moved over about 10, 11 months ago.
Mm,
I'll probably be back in Australia in January. I've got my flights booked.
nice.
But especially, I think I took a break of like 6, 7 months with videos
Mm,
from my YouTube, just kind of getting acclimatized to New York. But it's been a good way of keeping in touch with the Aussie roots and keeping in touch with football because it's so hard to watch it over here that I kind of lose touch. And I
yeah,
think you're more across the younger guys,
yeah,
the rookies and that. I don't haven't seen hardly any of these blokes play. So
yeah.
footy cards especially kind of keeps you in touch a bit because you
100%.
have to look up these blokes because
Yeah.
they're the ones whose new cards are coming out.
Yeah, well, exactly. So you're in New York. You went on holiday, decided not to come back. You're coming back in Jan, which is good to hear.
Yeah.
I'll be happy to have you back on home soil. So what do you do with your 9 to 5? What's your day job comprised of? You say that I know that you're in the finance area, but tell me
Mm,
about a little bit how footy cards and your job sort of align, where you found this hobby which sort of facilitates both.
yeah. So I'm not exactly in finance. I'm in accounting. So
Yep.
it's in that kind of business world.
Yep.
But I've always been interested in numbers and business and that kind of thing. So at the moment, I'm working for a real estate firm. They own properties and they do concerts and they own a lot of restaurants in New York. So I enjoy it. I like accounting. It's pretty boring stuff to most people, but it it gives me the background and skills as well, and things that I can bring into footy cards, which other people might not be talking about. So I think
Yeah,
I
and it
come
shows a
at it
lot in
from
your content as well, with a lot of
yeah.
the way that you describe different mechanisms in the market and stuff like that. It definitely
Mm,
shows your accounting prowess. All right, enough of the get to know ya. So
yeah.
tell everyone what you collect, why you collect.
So I collect modern rookie cards. I only really collect rookie cards because that's the stuff that I find the most like significant cards in the hobby. And if you look at any other hobby around the world, NBA, like I said, NFL, people only really care about the rookies. Yeah, there might be one of ones and low number
Yep.
cards of the superstars, but generally the high dollar cards are all rookies. So
Yep.
that's what leads me towards that. And yeah, I only collect after the year 2000 because that's the footy I watched. So I'm a big Dangerfield fan. I'm happy he finally got the grand final win.
Yes, I
Um,
know.
yeah, so
Yep.
guys like Dangerfield, Dusty, Fife, Pavlich, yeah, Hodge, Selwood, those kind of guys that I think are going to stand the test of time. Those kind of top 20 players of the last 20 years, and
Yep.
those are the guys I focus on.
Yeah, well, you're 100% right with, and that was something that I was surprised with coming into the market because, like, I got my first like introduction to sports cards through like YouTube and like the people in America and how they do it,
Mm,
and I was interested to find that like coming into the AFL space that um, a majority of people are team collectors, not rookie collectors, where like team collecting is so affordable on overseas markets, and rookie collecting is um, quite unattainable at certain points with certain
yeah,
players. It was just, I found it quite staggering, like sort of the inverse of the market. It was like sort of
yeah,
backwards.
yeah,
So
exactly.
I agree that I find as well, like with the rookie stuff, that's where I get my most enjoyment. I think what you were trying to say also was like these cards carry the most significance in their cardology, so to speak. Like when you look in 20 years' time, like Select can pump out as many inserts into, let's say, Optimum or other Series 2 releases, but like when you look back over the test of time, like what's going to stand out, what's going to hold value, I think that's the main sort of
Yeah,
gist of where we're at and where I think you can, one, enjoy the hobby, but two, also make some money, but more importantly, not lose money in
yeah,
certain ways. Like obviously, which we'll talk about a little bit later, is the aggressive versus steady income, which I think is where you and I differ the
oh,
most.
definitely. Yeah, I'm a
Um,
safety guy personally.
yeah, hundred
But
percent. But
going back to the rookies, like you said, the reprintability is the big one for me. As in, you can't reprint a rookie card. So once
mm,
that set or that year's done, that's all the rookie cards they're going to have. Whereas
yeah,
now that they can go out tomorrow and print 1,000 dusty different one of ones, and like no one
mm,
can stop them. What's different from that than 5 years ago?
yeah,
So I
and
think that's
Select are a business as well, and it's in their best
exactly.
interest to pump out the guys who have the
Mm.
highest demand, like we've seen in the last few years with Dusty and Sam Walsh. And I know you haven't been in the country, but I'm sure the Nick Dacos fanfare's reached all the way over into the US.
Oh, definitely.
Um,
Yeah, I've been
yeah,
hearing a lot about
it's gonna be nuts. It's like
that. Mm.
I got into the hobby like I think at the peak of Sam Walsh hype,
Yeah.
like with the like $1,200 for a DPS, and I feel generally that the Nick Dacos hype is bigger, will be bigger. It's
Mm.
just it's wild. More people are switching over from that team collecting to PC collecting to like still not many rookie collecting, but it's just interesting seeing like yeah how the
Mm.
market's changing, but then also Nick Dacos pops up and it's sort of like a right place, right time sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so the
Yeah. Go on.
differences between how I collect and you collect probably has a bit to do with you being in New York, but um, there's definitely a way, even when you're back here, you're of more of the safer investment side of things with like your players who have legacies already, and if they retire tomorrow, like they've still got an imprint on the game, that sort of thing. Whereas I'm sort of like more
You like
aggressive in the way that
speculating and
like I don't
prospecting
need
on different players.
yeah, like I don't need like a legacy. I just need like a 3 month window, so to speak, of like high level demand, and then like whether or not I see that sustaining, I'll hold. Or then if I think that that's a good price, it's a better price than what I predicted when I first got into that card, um, then I'll try to move it on. But
Yeah.
what do you think? And I've segued this into the main question was, what do you reckon the downside of how you collect and I collect? Because like we're so similar in
Mm.
so many different ways. But like, what do you think the downside is to the way that you and I both collect?
Both of the, yeah. So for me, I think the downside is definitely you lose out on the hype, as in there's many situations where I could have like read the market and said, for example, Buddy's 1,000 goals, like it was an absolute slam dunk move to buy his cards 3 to 6 months beforehand, and
Mm,
then sell them once he kicks his 1,000th goal. Like it was always going to happen.
100%.
But
Yeah,
number one, I'm in New York, and number two, like I don't really work like that. His bigger cards, I would have bought no matter what, and I'm
yeah.
still looking for them no matter what the price, like the DPS and the Platinum Draft Pick.
Yeah, well,
But
I've put the DPS after the 1,000th, and I haven't been able to get it back. But I've seen like get a
yeah,
few good prices, and I think
it
I,
is going down. It was like
yeah,
one just sold for 380, which is the
yeah,
lowest it's been for about 6 months.
yeah,
And like his performance in the grand final was pretty horrible. So I think
yeah.
the
And I think
hype's
I got
definitely
off
just going to
at,
go.
I think I got off at like 520, like a couple days after
Yeah, I mean,
his
yeah,
1,000 goals. So like, it's like as you
it's
were
just
saying,
jam.
like, yeah, you just need to like the hype and understanding hype and how
Mm,
demand works around hype as well. Because leading on to how I think I've been bitten as well, because like you say, you don't sell in hype, but then also I've
mm,
been bitten many times by not selling in hype and holding through hype. Um,
mm.
for example, in Optimum last year, I packed the Christian Petrarca influential, and I held it. We packed it just before the prelim final, and they won. And I was
Yeah,
like, you know what, I'm just gonna hold it and see what happens in the grand final. Like if Melbourne win the flag, he's like a good chance to win the norm because of just how he plays and the
yeah,
impact and you feel everything. And he won it, and then old Butters got very greedy, didn't take a price that was good for him. And I was like, nah, I'm gonna hold it. I'm gonna hold it, and then
yeah,
ended up like could have sold it for 1,300, 1,400, and now it's probably like a $600, $700 card. So
yeah. And that's the
there's
thing.
definitely
Like stuff's never going to get better than that situation. I mean,
yeah,
right now, I'm a big long term Dangerfield guy, but right
mm.
now, if you've got his like gold draft pick signature, and you can see him all just flood eBay because people are like I'm taking my $120, and I
There's
paid me like
400
fifty
of them.
bucks. Yeah, and like people paid $50 a couple of years ago, and they're like, well, let's just cash in. And I think that's definitely not a bad way to do it.
Yeah, and I think going on from that point as well, like one lesson that I had to learn, especially with the hype thing, is how many people are actually in the community and what the demand like can actually physically be at certain points in time. Because like from my perspective, like there's probably anywhere between 4,000 to 6,000 active participants in the AFL card hobby, probably, and there's a
Mm,
million AFL club members, which not only leaves some massive upside in the future, which we can talk about later, but it just goes to show that like if someone like don't expect your DMs to be flooded with all these people wanting this card all the time, like you're never going to go broke taking profit at the end of the day. So if you're
yeah,
happy with where it's at, like what I can recommend to everyone listening or anyone that's going to listen is that don't be greedy. Take your W when you can, and then
yeah,
roll it on to the next one. That's
yeah,
basically the aim of the game. So we've talked about both. We've talked about the financial aspect a lot. I want to talk about the collecting aspect a bit, but I also want to intertwine the two and talk about how you can be both in this hobby and get the extrinsic value out of it and the intrinsic value out of it with the money slash the personal enjoyment of owning these cards and what collectibles are all about. So from your perspective, where does collecting how much importance does collecting sit with you in comparison to the financial aspect?
yeah. I think it's a good question because the collecting aspect definitely gets a bit lost in my channel, as in
100%.
I just talk about
Oh, it
the
gets
money
lost with
side of it.
everyone though.
Yeah, because I feel like that's important, like almost more important than financial. Lots of other people have great PC pages, like going through their collection and stuff, but I
Mm,
don't see much of the financial stuff. So I think I concentrate that more in my niche as
yeah.
more of my niche. But that doesn't mean I'm not a big collector. Like I was buying big cards in 2016, 17 when like no one really cared about the AFL hobby. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, I definitely would hold stuff to zero, and I'd be happy with it because I think they are significant cards, and I really want them for my PC. But I also get a kick out of seeing something gain in value, and I think that just makes me feel even better about the cards I have and the choices. Because in some way, if the price goes up, that means other people want it, and that means you have something that's desirable, which is the whole point of collecting, really. That you want something that other people want. If no one else wanted it, then what's the point in having it, kind of thing.
I've got a question here from Sam Walsh Carterholic. Just to sort of cut in on this conversation, but I think it's a good one. And it talks about where we were going with the modern versus the 2010 superstars sort of thing. And it's where do you think players like Jason Horne-Francis sit with moving clubs being the first overall pick with the upcoming Optimum release? So it sort of talks about how
moving clubs,
which is also a good topic to actually segue into, because it's actually something that happens in the US and no one cares about, with players moving clubs and their rookie stuff doesn't decrease in value. But in the AFL market, because there's such a high level of team collectors, and when a player moves clubs, they don't want another club's colours in their collection. They sort of get put to the wayside, which I think is a little bit it's either a good opportunity or a little bit unfair to the player, but I understand it. And I think that's where Future Force, the Future Force set really comes into play with the financial side, to sell to people who
without the team club colours.
The state colours compared to the team clubs.
But I think the big thing of
sorry, you go.
I think the big thing with that is that if you're buying a card of a mediocre player who changes clubs, which at the moment Horne-Francis is kind of like a mediocre, he's not a superstar of the game yet, he very well could be, then that's going to hurt the value, because not everyone wants that card. But if you're talking about a really high-end player, like if Dustin Martin moved clubs tomorrow, then like his cards to me don't lose any value, because he's got so much collectability on himself. Like everyone from all supporters of all 18 clubs respect Dustin Martin. So it's not like his collecting base is going to fall off a cliff once he moves clubs. So I think it's not so much about moving clubs, it's about the kind of player it is who moves clubs.
Well, I think that's an interesting point you make, considering how you said you're a massive Dangerfield collection, and obviously Patrick Dangerfield's rookie cards are in Adelaide Crows colours, uniform, insignia, etc. Do you think that has impacted his, even though he's had a Brownlow career, probably a Hall of Fame career now, he's a Gary Ayres medalist, do you think the fact that he left Adelaide and his rookie cards are in Adelaide colours has impacted his collectability now that he's won a flag?
I think it definitely has, but every year he stays with Geelong, it makes that less and less. Like, I think he's definitely seen as a Geelong player now, and in a weird way, you'd think that would mean that it matters that his rookie is in Adelaide colours, but I think that makes it better, actually, because it doesn't matter where you start, you're like locked in as a Geelong legend rather than an Adelaide legend. Whereas if you had like a straight up 50-50 career, I think that would definitely confuse people and kind of get people to fall off on either side. But I mean, when I first bought the Platinum draft pick, I didn't even think of that. Like that didn't even cross my mind. I was like, why would people care about that? But over the years, I've definitely seen that happen. But yeah, what do you think?
I think it's interesting because, like, we talk about when players hit 26 and they become unrestricted free agents, and they're sort of halfway through their careers. So because they leave at that 26 like threshold, sort of, just how contracts are structured, and then players retire. If you're an unrestricted free agent, I'm assuming you're a good player and you're taking money because other teams want you. You're probably going to retire at that 32, 33-year-old mark. So you've generally split both clubs down the middle, which makes it hard to really make I'll say a legacy on either side of the coin, just because if you won a flag
you're not 100%, you're a bit confused, like you're collecting.
and it'll be interesting to see with Luke Jackson. I think this will be the greatest test on the market because Luke Jackson's obviously an amazing player. He's 20 years old. He's going to spend the rest of his days in a team at WA. So it'll be interesting to see. I know there'll be a sell-off early, but it'll be interesting to see how his cards progress as his career progresses and his achievements and success progresses as well.
Yeah.
There was
I think
also, a comment from Players Bish saying, just following on from what you're saying about how having an item that other people want is extremely satisfying. So that's a good point. So anything you'd like to add to that conversation, Daniel?
Yeah, about the players being in two separate clubs, I think when you think about that, you still don't think of those top players. Like Buddy Franklin has played pretty much half his career Hawthorn, half of his career Sydney, but no one cares about that because he's one of the greatest forwards to ever play the game. It's like Dunstall's the same, and people like Judd, he played pretty much half West Coast, half Carlton, won a Brownlow at each. Yet I don't think anyone's jumping off his train because he swapped clubs. But I don't know, maybe they do, but
I think it maybe like curbs like the peak hype. I think it like it puts like a ceiling on the peak hype. Whereas if those players like you just don't know, like of course they left before the trading card boom, so we'll never know like where they could have gone. But I know that like Buddy's probably a top 3 player I've ever seen in my whole life, and he's even though his rookie cards or his DPS is out of 600. I still find his rookie DPS quite an affordable point, like 380 for the best modern forward.
Yeah, it's not ridiculous. I rewatched my first ever video on my channel from March 2021, and I said in the video that his DPS was $200 at that point. And I was like, oh, it shouldn't be this cheap. But like looking back, that's outrageous. Like $200 for one of the best players to ever play. Just doesn't make sense.
For Jam, Daniel. All right,
for sure.
Now we've talked about just cards in general. I think we should get on to Optimum 2022. I assume you watched the release video that was put out a little bit over a week ago. How about you give everyone just your initial thoughts, your first reactions? What did you think when you saw the video?
Well, the first thing I looked at was the print run because like thinking about the general economic situation right now is like it's getting worse at the moment. So all I could think was because they could very easily, I said in my Optimum video that they could have printed 15,000. They probably could have printed 20,000 boxes and that'll sell out if they wanted to just grab that cash. But they kept it exactly the same as last year. They didn't even raise it like 5-10%. So that really struck me as Select caring about the future of the industry and not just trying to cash out. So that's probably the thing that struck me first. The second thing, I think it's a great release. Like I think it's great. I think they've improved upon last year, especially with the mirror single cards being signed. That's a big one. And then definitely having rookie cards or rookie players on inserts, which I've never seen before. I don't think it's ever happened before.
It happened with Horn-Francis in Brilliance, and that was the first time. So, and it doesn't surprise me.
That's a big difference. That's a big thing.
I just find it interesting that now that the dust has settled on Brilliance for 2022, and the only card that's going up in value at the moment is the Jason Horn-Francis card. It's started at 300 and now it's sort of up to 450, which sort of made me feel good that like what I'm doing on like a larger level, the theory's right. It's always nice to have that reassurance that like you're not like wasting your time or your money or your effort. So, but it was the first time a rookie has been put on an insert, and I'm glad that they doubled down on it with I think there's 6 Nick Dacos cards in this release and 7 Jason Horn-Francis.
Yeah, there's 7 Horn-Francis.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, there's not many more North players you could put on, so they had their hands tied a bit with that one. But
that is true. So the print run's right. It's good to see that Select maybe looking towards the long-term bag over the short-term bag. They have us all by the scruff of the neck, and they're just slowly just making sure they're sucking. They're just keeping the demand and supply at just the nice level. So it's good to
Yeah.
see that they didn't up the print run, which I agree. Also, something that I would like to add is that they've increased the accessibility for the collectors out there, with minimising the household limit to 2 across from 4 last year.
Yeah, that was a great
That
thing.
means that an extra 1,500 people were given opportunity to get their hands on this product, which I think is great, especially in recent years when a lot of the older collectors may feel a little bit disillusioned with the fact that they can't open up boxes and boxes of their product anymore, and they can't master set collect, or they're finding team collecting very expensive. So I'm glad that the accessibility has shifted the other way, even though that might mean that I get my hands on less stock. It doesn't matter. It's good for the hobby. What I'd also like to say before getting into just the nitty gritties of the release, there was a post put out yesterday from the boys at RGV and Card Authority about a Discord group that it's basically like a sneaker hype group who are trying to just
I did
buy
see
boxes.
that.
Yeah,
I
you
saw
did
that
see
on
this?
Oz Card Trader, I think, when I'm posting this.
Yeah. So what I wanted to talk about is, I personally have no problem with flipping boxes inside the community. If you're a collector and you want to flip a box for 2x to then reinvest back into the hobby, I've absolutely no issue with it. Go for it. The money's still circulating. But I want to talk about the cons of flipping, and in particular this type of flipping and what that has on a market level. I thought you'd be the best to get the opinion of.
Well, I think, yeah, absolutely right. That's exactly my thoughts on it as well, because it's the whole thing. You can't look at it as, if someone's flipping and they're keeping the money within the community, then they might be, they're making $200-300, but you can't just look at that isolated thing. That they're putting it back in. They're keeping older releases like afloat. They're helping like cards go up over time, which brings like more people into the hobby because they see things are actually going up and not down. So it just keeps the ecosystem running really well. But like you said, if people from outside are just like buying it and then reselling it and then taking the money out, that's really bad, and that's something that Select have to crack down on. I think they have tried their best.
They did a really good job.
Yeah.
With apparently the Discord group went into full meltdown. They kicked everyone out of the Discord group and made everyone submit their application, which I don't know what would fix, because like, how would you know if someone is the rat? But I think Selective increasingly doing more and more. Apparently they changed the URL link late.
I did hear that.
So
Yeah,
that,
I didn't even try and get boxes personally. I was just like stuff.
Yeah, but Selective just getting a bit smarter upstairs, and it's really good to see that they're protecting the people who are trying to keep the money in the hobby. And also, just a quick statement on flipping boxes, because I know it's a very touchy subject in the community, and I know there's a lot of hate that flies around release time of people trying to move boxes. If you don't like box flipping, then you don't like breakers. And if you buy into breaks and actively lobby against people trying to sell their boxes on for a profit, then you're sort of just contradicting yourself, because these breakers are buying these boxes on the secondary market. They get a certain allocation every year, which I think the big six get somewhere between 5 cases or whatever. I'm not 100% sure on the number, but like, if you're buying into these breaks and you're a part of the community, but then you're also lobbying against people trying to keep the money within the community, I think you're doing yourself a little bit of a disservice. But just a little bit of food for thought.
I think a big thing. Sorry, just one more thing about the flipping as well is, what I find really interesting is, like, people never were talking about it when boxes were cheap. Like 2014 Select Honors 1, which has Cripps draft pick signature, Bont draft pick signature, and like Zach Merritt, like Josh Kelly. It's a pretty stacked release. That sat from 2014 up until like 2019 on the Select website, which is just nuts to think about now. But it's a bit, I don't know, it's a bit ironic, or like, it's not really fair from older collectors to say, oh, I need my hands on this product just because it's like, because now it's a great product, now you want it, kind of thing.
Yeah,
fair enough if you're buying it the whole way through and
yeah,
you're kind of like loyal the whole time. But if you're just
yeah.
getting in now because now this is where the big money is and the really cool, exciting cards, and I think that's a bit contradictory, like you said.
Yeah, and I think Select have done really well with the introduction of the SEC membership, so that people who have been loyal and pay their membership every year
Mm.
get first access to boxes. Don't have to fight for it; just pay within the week, and you get guaranteed stock. I think it's the best value for money investment you can make in this hobby.
$100 for sure.
It is
It's a
stupid. It
bargain.
is stupid that I didn't have it last year, and I
Yeah.
deeply regret it. But I have it now, and I'll never part ways with it ever. I'll pay for my SAC before I pay off my car. So, um, getting into Optimum, what did you think worked last year that they've kept this year?
That's a good question. I think the dual signatures were super popular last year, and especially the player selection they had. So I think they concentrated a lot on getting the right players, maybe rather than getting like bulk kind of thing. And
Yep.
they've definitely done that again this year with their selections: Judd, Buckley, Gary Ablett, who else? Dunstall. So no, they've done pretty good with that for
No,
sure.
no. Um, I was more leaning towards the tiered DPS system, which
Mm,
Optimum 2021 released. It was the first of its kind with team colors. They did it in Future
Future
Force
Force.
17 with the gold,
Have they
platinum,
never
and
done that
green.
before?
They've never
Is
done
it
that with
three? Did they
with
have
an
two
AFL
previously
product.
as
No,
well? Cool.
they did it with a
See,
Future
that seems like
Force.
it's been around for ages now, which is good. It means it makes sense and it's working.
Yeah, they've done it in multiple Future Force. They had a gold SIG out of 25, and the green in 2017 was out of 25, and the green in Jacob Lederings was out of 40. But this is the first. Last year was the first time they brought it to an AFL product. Do you think it's going to be as popular as it was last year?
Well, definitely with certain players, like you said, the Nick Dacos, stuff like that. I think people will be a lot more careful this year because last year, I mean, they have 65 people, like draft picks signing. So last year, people were buying, pick 55 for the platinum for what, like $300-400 or something.
Yep.
Like certain picks, especially of the bigger clubs,
Yep.
and that person probably never hasn't played and is on the hour and might get dropped in the next coming seasons, and so the value's plummeted. So I think people are going to be a lot more smart about their picks and kind of pick players who show like promise straight out the gate, maybe because
Yeah.
if they don't play next year, their price is going to go down considerably.
I think that also that is, I think you live by the sword, die by the sword with the team collecting aspect. Like the product has never been so draft heavy until
Mm.
last year, really, which is the first year that everyone signed. Um, and yeah, you're right. Like a lot of people got stung with your, I don't even know who got delisted. Your Connor Downies and there's a Collingwood rookie that got delisted. So they're all starting to like either re-sign or get delisted. So
Mm.
I think a lot of people will be more careful with players I haven't seen. But on the other hand, if you do your research and you follow these kids through um, the junior level, I think there's a big opportunity to invest in some blokes who haven't played a lot this year because of a non-COVID season where a lot of last year's crop and the crop before that you got a lot of exposure due to how many changes they were making with COVID. I think
Yeah.
there's a definite opportunity for people to pick players. There'll be price points of players which I'll be like, yeah, as a short term, like
Mm.
I want to get in on that.
Yeah. But on the
Um,
investing side as well, I think people have to realize that you're going to have opportunities to get these players in the future. And
yeah,
some people, if you're just a crazy huge collection and you want the card now, that's fair enough. That's
yeah.
on you. But if you're thinking that the prices aren't going to go down, well, in 9.5 times out of 10, they will go down. I think nearly every single draft pick of last year's crop has gone
I'll
down. Can you
raise
think
you.
of
I'll say
anyone who's gone up?
9.9 out of 10,
Mm.
I think.
So if you just
Like,
wait a bit, you're going to get a better entry price. I mean, I found a post on Ozcard Trader of a Dustin Martin DPS in like 15, 16, and it was selling for $75. And like that's after he had an amazing start to his career, and still no one really cared. So
Mm.
like unless they just boom, like maybe a Sam Walsh or I can't think of any other super young players in that kind of bracket. But
Yeah, but you're right with the waiting time, because there was cards that I picked up recently in preparation for this release who last year I didn't want a bar of, like Jamara, Archie Perkins, Nick Cox. Their prices were so high due to I'll say the tax that was applied to them, with Jamara being the number one draft pick and Essendon having the 3 top 10 picks, which made their pick your team breaks really high, which then correlated to a really high starting out value.
yeah, it's all a flow-on effect, and also there were
Yeah,
so many new people to the hobby
yeah,
who, especially people from other hobbies. Which, I mean, if you told a basketball collector that you could get the number one rookie of a set out of 40, his best card signature for like what was it, like
700
seven, eight
bucks.
hundred bucks,
Yeah,
they're going to be like, oh, that's nothing. That's chump change. Like that's always going to go up.
quite
Whereas,
legit.
yeah, whereas like if you had followed Australian cards for a while, you know that's a huge price to pay for a rookie.
Yeah, 100%. I'll bring it down to a comeback of an insert which was highly demanded. Footy's finest refractor is back. It's
Yeah,
back with a vengeance. I'm happy. I predicted that it was going to come back, and they did not disappoint me. Apparently, they put out a survey select about a year ago, just trying to test the water of what insert would be good. They've run it twice. It's obviously such a good
it looks good,
in,
man. It's a good
it,
card.
it's a good card. I know the Dustin Martin one. The Dustin Martin Footy's Finest is probably my favourite ever Dusty card. It just looks so clean.
Mm,
What do you reckon that'll come out hot out of the gates come release time?
definitely, and I covered in my video that it's out of 80, so it's not super rare. Like you look at even the marquees from last year, I think we're out of 40, so it's like half as rare as that, but you just know it's gonna come out hot. And this is the kind of card which I only collect rookies because I think they're a much more like safer play. But this is a card that long term, it's really iconic and it has a chance of kind of going up because uh, of how popular it is.
Mm, yeah, I agree. I'm super excited. I really like the checklist they've run with
Who's the
as well.
players?
There's a lot of big players. Your Walsh, your Parrish, your Brayshaw, Took, Sicily, Clary, Rosie, Max King, Cochin, Franklin, Norton.
Yeah, it's
Like
pretty good.
2 out of 3 times you're pulling a banger. So
Yeah,
I'm I'm really keen to have one in hand. Hopefully, I'm lucky enough to pull one.
let's
But
hope
as
you
you
don't
said,
get
they're
a
not the
Ben Keith.
rarest, so yeah, I hope they come out good. Um, I want to touch on a couple of things that I'm worried about in this set. The first one being the All Australians. Last year was the first time that Select ever ran with a numbered All Australian insert, which I thought was a good inclusion. I thought it was a good looking insert. But 12 months on, I don't think they've really stood the test of time. And it interests me to wonder why they've decided to run it as a two-tiered insert when the market has said that they don't really hold their value over time. I was wondering if you got that same impression.
Yeah, that's a great point. I like the All Australian insert. I think it should be numbered. But yeah, they're not really collectible. Like people don't really want them, and I don't know I can't put my finger on why exactly, but I get the same feeling. It's like I don't really want this card necessarily. I can only think of maybe if you were doing a run on someone like Dangerfield who's got 8, like you just line them up all together, that'd be pretty cool. But like,
Yeah.
it just doesn't really, yeah,
Or if you set
do it for
collected
me.
them last year and I guess it's a good point. They've made it easier for you to collect it this year just because
Mm.
of the two-tiered system. You can just go the base one, which I think is out of 195. So
195, I
like
think.
big
I
print
think that
run.
card looks good as well. Like it's got
Yeah,
a bit of
I
hate,
think
but I think that the thick borders are pretty nice.
I think if they just ran with the medal and kept it to 65 like they did last year, I think it would have been a success. I think that both
Yeah,
cards are like good looking cards. I just think just because they're tiered separately, I don't think there's enough differential between the two for them to succeed. on the secondary market. So that's one thing I'm worried about. Another topic that I came up with that struck me within the first 30 seconds of seeing this product was the possibility that some of these mirror SIGs are going to outprice the jewels. So you have,
Okay.
with a lot of these jewel SIGs, so some of the players you mentioned, you got Judd, Lloyd, Fife, Ablett, Gehrig, Jack Steele, Petrarca, Glenn Jakovic, like blokes that don't have a lot of individual SIG cards. Are they more valuable to have as an alone SIG, and does the dual SIG aspect bring down the value of the dual?
Of the big players, you mean?
Of the big players? Because like you look at Nat Fife, you got Ben Allen. You look at Gary Ablett Jr., you got Ben Ainsworth. You look at Jason Dunstall, you got Jack Gunston. Maybe not to that extreme effect, but like you got Glenn Jakovic and Jack Darling. I'm just curious where the price is
it's a
going to
great
land.
point. Yeah, definitely. I think you're right. It doesn't make sense to get the duel if you're really only after the big name player. If you're a Gold Coast fan, you probably want the duel still. But if you're just a Gary Ablett fan, which there are a lot of Gary Ablett fans who don't support Gold Coast, like you're just definitely going
Exactly.
to go
This
for
is
the
my
single
point.
SIG. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's a good point. Um, what effect do you think that's going to have on the release?
Well, I think that the dual SIG's actually going to be moderated by the mirror SIG, if that makes sense, not the other way around. I think the mirror SIG is going to set the price for the dual SIG.
Okay.
I think that a lot of the combinations don't add, like in the ones that we've just discussed, don't add a lot of value to them. So I think the mirror SIGs are going to be the pioneers in setting the price, and then the dual SIGs are going to follow afterwards.
Because they're
I
both
think,
out of 50, aren't they?
yeah, and also looking on from last release, it's interesting to see where the prices of the 2021 dual SIGs land, because players have now signed in this set, what are these out of? 100 SIGs. So each player has signed 100 times compared to last year when it was only 50 times. So instantly the dual SIGs have that little like increased rarity. So it'll be interesting to see how well they age compared to this year's dual SIGs and mirror SIGs.
It's probably worth mentioning as well that there has been a lot of dual SIGs lately with
A lot.
2 rounds of Brilliance, last year's Optimum, here, and then just in the general release, they sometimes have like I think they had like brother signature and that kind of thing. No, that was that was Brilliance, wasn't it?
Yeah,
But
Brilliance with the Burgoynes and the
Hills
Rockers and
yeah.
Jarman.
So there has been quite a lot, and I think people are going to start fatiguing from that because when they first came out, it was pretty new for the hobby.
Yeah.
And like super exciting, and it still is, but it's extremely dependent on the names now. People aren't just going to want a dual SIG of anyone because there's previous ones from previous years. So unless you keep making the names bigger and better, then they're probably going to have to switch it up next year, I'd say.
Yeah, and I'm an owner of a Cousins Natanui dual SIG, and seeing that they expanded that to a mirror SIG as well kind of made me happy that I got on when I could. Even though in hindsight I probably overpaid for it, but I'm just happy to. You don't see too many of them come up for sale. What was I going to say? I was going to say something. Yeah, and it's just about the fatigue of the dual SIG, because they also ran it in Prestige. They did a 2-pronged signature redemption in Prestige as well, which is the Series 1 product. So, and I think some of those combinations are going to yield better returns than the Hobby 2 dual SIG. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on. I think they've massively dropped the ball with the metal cards. I just don't really like the card. I think it's...
You don't like it? The metal card.
Yeah, the metal. Sorry, the metal. With the Wines, Bondapelli, Mackay, Charlie Jackson. I think last year's design was really nice, and I think they've just... It looks like something you'd find in like mid-2010s metal card, you know? like
Mm.
something that's like
Oh, I
unnumbered.
guess it looks like a highlights card, really.
Yeah,
Like they
yeah,
just put it out.
like a highlights card. Yeah, exactly. So I think
It
that
shouldn't
would
be
be
numbered to 50 anyway. I think that's a cop out. I think they should be putting something else in that 50 card slot.
yeah, or yeah, either yeah. I think they could have upped the medal to something like maybe a All Australian, the first one sort of level, like just
Mm.
so like team collectors can, if one of their best players had a good season, then everyone gets a slice of the pie and it doesn't cost everyone an arm and a
Yeah.
leg.
Do you have
Um,
any ideas about any other insight search you'd like to see? Any new
um,
ones?
I really like the futures. I really like the futures. I think the checklist is definitely up my alley. A lot of up
Yep.
and coming faces who don't have a lot of cards. I'll definitely think I'll be looking for them in like the jump number variations. If I see one pop up and it's a player I like, I'll definitely
Yeah.
have a crack. Some players that stick
That's
out.
going to age well, that design, I think.
I think it will as well. It's like a play on from the Panini Wave system that they've got going on in their various
Oh, yeah.
NBA releases.
Cool.
Yeah, a few
But what
players.
about new ones that aren't in this one? Do you want to see anything in particular, whether it be, another rookie set or another type of insert, like maybe a colored kind of situation?
That's a good question. Like, are you talking about like I guess
Like something to swap out if you don't like the All Australian standard card and the medal card, do you have any
so
ideas?
I actually have an idea. So with the Prestige release, they gave the Virtuosos in series to the second release of it to defenders. I thought that wasn't going to age well, and it didn't age well. I think that it would have been cool to give them like a defensive sort of insert, like a My House sort of rip off,
That would be
something like
sick,
that.
actually.
That would have been
That'd be
cool.
great.
Just like a defensive sort of
And golden fist kind of thing.
like brick wall sort of insert. I think
Yeah,
that would have been cool just for something different. Um, but then it just depends on Select's growth as a product and like their design, what like the rarity that they want to push out. Do they want to push out cards numbered less than 25? I don't think the market's ready for that yet, but um,
mm,
we've seen with the release of the Skybox in the US how the PMG hype is still very alive and the secondary market value on them is still high even without the NBA license. So I think hopefully something like that comes out one day. But
mm.
yeah,
I'd
it's
love
just
them to kind of lean on the Australian stuff a bit more, like have
yeah,
really kind of Australian inserts,
yeah,
at least one every release. I think that'd be pretty funny
yeah. That'd be
because we
pretty.
do tend to copy the US hobbies and like even the US, TV shows and movies and that. So it would be good to have more of our own thing, um,
Yeah,
and push that forward. Be a bit more unique, I guess.
for sure. Also, what happened last release was release day came around and it was discovered that there was an Easter egg insert, the gold headliner from last year out of 25. I assume there's going to be another Easter egg. We don't know what it is. They've swapped out the headliner for the Matrix card, which is the Panini
Which
Skybox.
one do you like better, the Matrix or the headliner?
I think I've seen a lot of hate on the Matrix, and I think once they're in hand, and if they sort of had that like see-through effect through them, I think they'll
Yeah,
be a lot
like the
better than
pin. Yeah,
I think they'll be like they'll age better than the headliners. Um, but I think that the Easter egg is either going to be a gold matrix or a gold footy's finest refractor, which I think would be awesome. It'd
yeah,
be a
that'd be
really
nuts.
cool card.
I'd almost think they shouldn't do that. Well, they shouldn't do that because that's just too big a card to drop as an Easter egg. I think. That'd be
Well, yeah.
nuts.
Well,
But it's possible. Yeah,
the thing is, the matrix and the headliners numbered out of the same, and the footy's finest refractor is a little bit shorter numbered, so maybe it will be the matrix instead. But we'll just have to wait and see.
I like the
Um,
Matrix better as well. I wasn't a
yeah,
big fan of the headliners,
yeah. I
and
thought it was
especially the 25. It was just it didn't make sense the prices they were selling for out the gate. It was like over $1,000 for some. It just
yeah, I
made
think they're going
absolutely
to
no
age
sense.
pretty poorly.
Mm.
So there's obviously a lot of value on offer at your $325 rip, which is the same as last year. So not really a discussion topic, but just more of a statement that if you're thinking about ripping or flipping, um, with my boxes, like I have, with all the information I have available to me, I'm still going to opt to rip, just because with the flip, you're cutting off that potential upside, and it's a really, like, the good thing about AFL prices, they're very insert heavy, and with the numbering and stuff, like, it doesn't take for a lot to recoup your value back. So what I'd recommend is that if you're 50-50, at the end of the day, it's the hobby's there to be enjoyed, and I say rip on.
Yeah, yeah. If you're on the fence, definitely. And if you enjoy ripping, then it's a bit of a no-brainer, I think. Personally, if it was a choice between the two, I'd flip it just because I'm not like I'm a pretty risk-averse person, and
There you
I
go.
know
There's the difference.
I know we're not the same on this. And you think, did you say the worst rip you think is going to be is like $500 value?
Yeah, I think if you rip and sell on release day, the worst you'll get is $500.
What if you get all Gold Coast cards?
Well, the thing is, if you look at where the prices were for these copper SIGs and where they came out the gate as to where they are now, and I know that you threw a number in your video, it was like $400 expected value. But a lot of these, like the Jamara copper, was going for $250, and
Yeah. Do you think people have learned from that though and are going to
I
change or?
think as a product as a whole, yes. I don't think in terms of day costs, there's going to be a lot of logic flying around. I think that
Mm,
copper SIG's probably going to land at like $350-$400
here's
out
one.
gate,
Yeah, I'm
the
sure.
copper. And I
And the
think the
thing is,
gold's going to sit around the 600, and then the platinum, have fun, kids.
I was thinking 1200, but then I've heard numbers like double that. So is there kind of some inside word
Well,
on
my
what it's going to go
my
for, or what people are willing
estimation
to pay?
from the demand on the cards that are available was around the 1,200 mark. I think if you packed one and you listed it for 1,600, you'd get a pretty hard bite pretty early.
Yeah.
Just someone who wants to secure it. But yeah, I think he's yeah, I think it's about to break some records, that card.
Is he going to play defense his whole career though, or
I
is he a
think it's going to
midfielder?
be a Callum Mills sort of operation. I think it's going to be an apprenticeship on a halfback flank, which then turns into an inside mid role as his body gets
Mm,
bigger. That's my prediction. Um,
cool.
so I know, back to the financial part. Where do you think a lot of these cards are going to land from release to, let's say, 2 months' time?
2 months, I'd say 95% will drop, just like they always do. However, because there's so many, well, 2 months, yeah, everything's going to drop. But once we get into next season, because there's so many different rookie cards, I think it's a smart thing they've done because although, like, yeah, lots of them are going to drop off as well, but there's huge upside. So every every week someone plays well, like some sort of rookie out of that 65 is going to get a bump in value.
Yep.
So if you're looking to hold on to any cards, like personally, I wouldn't hold on to any, but if you want to, and if you want to, gamble a bit, then I'd definitely look towards those rookie cards, and especially those rookie inserts, because it is pretty historic that this is the first main set that has rookies printed on inserts,
I think it'll
and
be pretty significant as well, for sure.
definitely it just makes sense, and yeah, especially the futures. I like the futures. I wanted to keep it a bit of a secret for myself, but you have to give
Fair,
some stuff up.
fair, fair. Um, Now to the other side of all of us, any cards that tickle your fancy from a collecting point of view? Any cards that you look at the checklist and you're like, oh, I want a slice of that?
Definitely I'm a Dogs fan, so definitely the Bailey Smith, Brad Johnson dual sig. Like
That's a good one.
it's the best combo they could have done. It's unbelievable. Brad Johnson was my favorite player growing up, but I still don't think I'm gonna be willing to pay however much it is because the Brad
Well,
Johnson has some pretty cool sigs from. I think he has a 1999 Destiny sig. If you've seen that one, it's like a really cool sig release of like
yeah,
Rashudo Johnson.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah, 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 yeah. I know the one you're talking
like
about. Yeah,
really, like a really good shine on it. So I'd
yeah,
probably, if they're going for a lot of money, and I really want a Brad Johnson card, I'd probably just go back and get an older one.
Yeah,
Other than
well,
that, I don't know. Probably probably nothing. It would probably be more interesting your side on
um,
what you're
well,
looking at.
I'm interested in a Nat 5 mirror sig just because he actually doesn't have a lot of SIGs going around.
Mm,
All he has is his the Brownlow predictor winner
the
on the
booklet,
SIGs.
yeah,
So I think that'll be a cool SIG. I think Matt Fife's criminally undervalued in our hobby because he plays with Freo. He's probably on his
it's
day. He's
nuts.
probably the best I've ever seen. So
Yeah,
I think that'll be the card that I'm after. But I think I'll let the market marinate on that one, and then I'll choose my price point.
yeah.
Um.
No, I think that's a good
Anyway,
point.
finishing up. Let's back to you. Future plans in cards. What content are you looking to be making in the next 12 months? Are we going to see more of you?
Yeah, that's the plan. I'm gonna try and be a bit more consistent because I do enjoy I enjoy making videos. So I'm gonna start trying to do a series to keep me a bit honest. Because if I don't do something
Yeah.
recurring, then I just don't put out a video at all. So I'm gonna
Yeah.
try and do a weekly series on the top 10 highest selling rookie cards.
Yeah.
Because it's something I kind of want to know anyway, so it just works out really well. I think it's interesting to show people what things are selling for. So that's the first thing, and then going to keep going with the more financial minded stuff because
Yep.
that's I think maybe what the hobby is missing a tad in terms of content wise
Yeah, the
and
hobby's missing a
getting
lot
people up
content
to date.
wise. There's a
Yeah,
lot of gaps to be filled. But yeah, last question. Predictions for the future on the market as a whole. You're in the US, obviously. There's a recession going on. The ripple effects haven't fully reached Australia yet. Where do you
mm.
think the market will lie in 12 months' time? But also take into account we're in a bit of a blanket in Australia.
Yeah. In 12 months, I think it's going to be really strong, but you just got to be careful with what kind of cards you hold. I think the
Yeah,
more important cards, the more significant cards will see maybe even if they're flat. I mean, that's not a bad outcome for the next 12 months because I think it
yeah,
is going to be a bit painful for certain people. But it's more about those cards that people could go without that are going to see
yeah,
the biggest hit. So if interest rates go up 2% and you got a 500 grand mortgage, then that's 10,000 extra dollars you're paying in interest per year. So that's like your footy card fund, 10 grand that doesn't go towards that. So that's going to hit certain cards more than others. And I think there is going to be some kind of, maybe not huge drop, but some kind of drop in footy card prices.
and maybe more of a pickiness in opposed to the buy everything mentality that has been in the card market since its
Definitely.
inception. Well, Daniel, that was a great chat. I said before we started that it was going to be 30 to 40 minutes, and it ended up being an hour. So it's just a good
Yeah, I think it
chat.
went pretty well. Sorry, I probably rambled a lot, but
No,
I
that's all
enjoyed
good.
it.
That
I
was
had
a
a lot
great
of fun.
chat. I think we'll plan to do this maybe a couple of weeks after Optimum, just talk about where the market is, maybe get a little bit more into the finance stuff that you like, and just talk about how the release has been recepted.
Yeah,
But yeah, until then, I'll post a video and I'll make sure I tag Dan in all the right places. So until
thanks a lot,
then, hope
mate.
everyone
And
enjoyed the
yeah, if you
live.
can download it. I'll put it on
Yeah,
the
I
channel.
will. I will, 100%.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
No worries, mate. Have a good one.
Thanks. Gotcha.